Most fan theories are harmless, but some burrow into your brain and whisper, what if this wasn't a feel-good movie at all? Today we're diving into the kind of fan theories that make you rethink your childhood, your favorite classics, maybe even your sanity. So put down your popcorn, hug your childhood plushies goodbye, and focus, because these are 10 fan theories that are so disturbingly plausible, they should come with a trigger warning. Let's go. Everyone remembers Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as this magical, whimsical dreamland. Candy rivers, flying elevators, a man in a purple coat who sings about imagination. But according to one of the darkest fan theories out there, this isn't a fun little adventure. It's a premeditated murder tour. And the kids? They're not contestants. They're victims. The theory goes like this. Wonka handpicked the worst-behaved children not to teach them lessons, but to eliminate them, one by one, silently, permanently. And the evidence is chilling. First off, those Oompa Loompa songs? They're not off the cuff. They're choreographed musicals with lyrics tailored to each child's accident. You're telling me they wrote, rehearsed, and staged a whole number about Violet Beauregarde turning into a blueberry on the spot? Come on. Then there's the factory design. Each mode of transportation, boat, elevator, Wonkamobile, always has just enough seats for the exact number of people left after each kid disappears. It's like the factory knew they wouldn't make it, and let's not forget Wonka himself, completely unbothered. A child gets sucked into a pipe and he's like, hey, should have listened to the rules. No calls to the police, no parental concern, just a dead-eyed stare and a vague quote about consequences. By the time Charlie wins, he's not inheriting a business. He's inheriting a cover-up. The only reason he makes it out alive? He played by Wonka's rules and kept quiet, so yeah. What looked like a candy-coated fairy tale might have just been a child snuff factory with great branding. It's a living. That's what the vacuum cleaner says right before it swallows prehistoric crumbs and sighs like it's got student debt. The Flintstones have always been a goofy take on prehistory, stone cars, dinosaur dishwashers, and a bird that prints your photos by hammering a rock. But there's a theory that says we've been watching it all wrong, because the Flintstones don't live in the past. They live in the future, specifically after the apocalypse. Here's the setup. Sometime between now and Yabba Dabba Doomsday, the world ends. War, nukes, AI uprising, too many Twitter arguments. Take your pick. Civilization collapses, and humanity crawls back from the rubble with nothing but bedrock and attitude. And somehow, they rebuild, sort of. They don't reinvent wheels, they carve them. They don't rediscover electricity. They just stick a beaver inside a box and call it a blender. And yeah, they celebrate Christmas in the Stone Age, which makes zero sense, unless they're clinging to the last scraps of memory from the old world, the real old world. Then comes the kicker. The Jetsons meet the Flintstones. Supposedly, George Jetson travels back in time. But what if he doesn't? What if his Sky City utopia is just the upper crust of society, literal 1%ers floating above a poisoned earth, while everyone down below is living in a glorified salvage yard made of rock and denial? Same universe, different floors. And suddenly, Dino isn't a pet, he's a mutation. The appliances aren't charming, they're sentient laborers. And the modern Stone Age family might be the last people left who still remember what modern even meant. Of course, the creators say it's just cartoon logic. But I've seen cartoon logic. It doesn't explain why Barney Rubble knows what a bank is, or why Fred takes bowling so seriously when there's no known currency system, or why I suddenly feel like I need to rewatch every episode wearing a tinfoil hat and whispering, they knew, they always knew. Me? I thought it was a show about a caveman yelling at his boss. Now I think it's a warning, and I still don't know how their TV gets signal. Jordan Peele's Us already did enough emotional damage on its own. Creepy doppelgangers, a twist ending, scissors becoming a horror weapon, but Reddit said, nice. Now let's make it worse. According to one disturbingly clever fan theory, Adelaide's son Jason also got swapped. Yep, like Mother, like Tether. Here's what they noticed. Jason's kind of off. He's building tunnels in the sand like he's digging back home. He doesn't speak much. He grunts, he wears a creepy mask, and that stare down with his mom at the end? It doesn't say, pass the fruit snacks. It says, I know exactly who you are. It's the kind of theory that makes you want to rewatch the entire movie in slow-mo, squinting like you're reading a contract from Satan. But, turns out, it's not true. Peele himself waved it off. Jason's just a weird kid, not a mole person. Sorry. Still, credit where credit's due. Reddit went full conspiracy corkboard on this one. Charts, timelines, tunnel schematics. Like if these people applied this level of dedication to their taxes, the economy would be thriving. But alas, Jason stays Jason, and Pluto stays Pluto. No twist, no switch. Just one deeply messed up family vacation, and a lifetime of trauma no therapist is qualified to handle. Anyway, I tried building my own underground theory once too. Posted it, got roasted, one upvote, one comment. This ain't it, chief. So yeah, Jason might not be a tether, but I definitely am. To disappointment. Ah, yes, The Blair Witch Project. The movie that gave an entire generation motion sickness and trust issues with the woods. We were all terrified by what we didn't see. Creepy noises, stick figures, lost maps, and that infamous ending with a guy standing silently in the corner like he's buffering. But what if the real horror wasn't supernatural? This theory says there was never a witch at all, that Josh and Mike, Heather's two besties, lured her into the woods to murder her. Disturbing? Absolutely. Because suddenly this isn't some found footage ghost story. It's a hyper-realistic, premeditated friendship homicide. And the evidence? Uncomfortably compelling. First, the accidental loss of the map? Super convenient. They laugh about it, like psychopaths. The increasing tension between the three feels less like cabin fever and more like guilt leaking out of the script. And that ending? Josh standing creepily in the corner while Heather screams off camera? It's not witchcraft, it's staging, no magic, no curses. Just a very human capacity for gaslighting, betrayal, and knowing how to handle a camcorder in low light. What makes it worse is how real the acting feels. Their fear, their exhaustion, it's almost too perfect. Like maybe the actors weren't acting, or maybe the Reddit crowd just needs to stop watching movies at 3 a.m. But honestly, credit where it's due. Reddit turned a paranormal legend into a true crime doc, and I respect that hustle. Me? I tried posting a fan theory once. Got 2 upvotes and someone told me to touch grass. So yeah, maybe the Blair Witch isn't real. But the social anxiety from watching 3 friends fake a camping trip and commit murder, that haunts me daily. At first it's funny. A kid defending his house with paint cans and tripwires? Iconic. We laughed. We bought the merch. We all wanted to be Kevin McAllister. But then, you look closer. He didn't just set traps. He engineered psychological torture. The man was 8 and already inventing medieval-grade punishment for minor property crime. Remember the tarantula, the blowtorch to the scalp? The nail through the foot? That's not self-defense. That's the origin story of a man who later whispers, "I want to play a game," while you're chained to a radiator. And then it clicks. Jigsaw, John Kramer, prefers analog traps, tape recorders, steel mechanisms, sadistic moral logic wrapped in DIY craftsmanship, just like Kevin. What if the trauma of being forgotten by his family, twice, broke him? What if no one ever checked in after that second trip to New York? What if he grew up thinking pain was the only way people learn? He doesn't just punish people, he gives them choices. You stole? Here's your lesson. You're greedy? Let's test that with a reverse bear trap. And it all started with a paint can to the face? Of course, it's just a theory, but if you told me Jigsaw's blueprints were drawn in crayon, I'd believe you. Reddit cooked this one up, and honestly, respect. It takes a special kind of brain to look at Home Alone and go, yep, that's Saw the prequel. Me? I watched Home Alone last Christmas and got anxious just from the doorbell sound, so I think I'm safe. Kevin? Less so. Summer Lovin' had me a blast, but maybe she didn't make it past the splash. According to one of the most famous and weirdly convincing fan theories, Sandy doesn't survive that beach date with Danny. She drowns, and everything that follows, the singing, the dancing, the sudden leather wardrobe change, is her brain firing off one last dream sequence before the lights go out. The theory hinges on one line, "I saved her life, she nearly drowned." But what if he didn't save her? What if that's Danny lying in her dying fantasy? Suddenly, Rydell High feels less like a real place and more like a sugar-coated purgatory. The characters? Idealized versions of people she wishes she knew. The plot? So smooth, so unrealistic, so shiny it might as well have been polished by denial itself. And then there's the ending. Danny and Sandy drive off in a flying car, like, literally soar into the clouds. Everyone always assumed it was just musical magic. But within this theory, it's not whimsy, it's Sandy's soul ascending. Even the escalating weirdness of the movie supports it. As the story goes on, the stakes vanish. Conflicts resolve with a song. Bullies back down after a drag race. Everyone's teeth are too white. It's high school by way of hallucination. Still, the creators deny it. Grease's co-creator Jim Jacobs called the theory bizarre and said it was never the intention. Travolta said he liked the idea, but admitted it wasn't canon. The director just wanted a magical fairy tale ending, not a death allegory wrapped in pomade and poodle skirts. But here's the thing, once you've heard the theory, it's hard to unsee it. You start noticing how dreamlike it all feels, how little sense anything makes if you really think about it, and how perfect it would be, tragically, beautifully perfect, for a dying teenager to imagine her way into the best high school romance ever written, and then float off into eternity. Me? I once had a near-death moment in high school too. Slipped on a cafeteria floor, heard wind chimes, felt weightless, then hit the ground and someone yelled, "Bro, just died for a grape." So yeah, maybe Sandy lived. But honestly, if your final fantasy is a dance number with Travolta, I say, go toward the light. Yes, we're doing this. There's a theory, an actual theory, that the minions from Despicable Me used to work for the Nazis. You heard that right? Those squeaky little tic-tacs with goggles and no concept of personal space? Yeah. Supposedly goose-stepped their way through World War II. Now, let's all take a moment to absorb that. Here's how the theory goes. In Minions, the narrator claims they've served history's most evil masters, from T-Rex to Dracula. Then there's a suspicious gap between 1933 and 1945. You know, a tiny period in world history when nothing controversial happened in Europe. The film just skips it. Gee, wonder why? 1 second they're helping Napoleon, next thing you know, they're chilling in an icy cave for 20 years like they just needed a break. Now, technically, Universal says they were frozen during that time. But let's be honest, "we were frozen" is exactly what I'd say if someone asked what I did between 1939 and 1945. The math doesn't lie either. Gru recruits the minions in the 1960s, so they survived something. And I don't know if you've met Germans, but they love punctuality. The idea of a chaotic banana creature wandering through Nazi Germany feels historically unlikely. Still, if any country was going to organize a department of scientifically engineered slapstick henchmen, it would have been Germany. Let's not kid ourselves. The efficiency alone. Achtung, Hans, Minion 247 is late for the villain orientation. Anyway, is the theory true? Probably not, but it's also not true. Me? I posted a meme about it once and got flagged for historical insensitivity. Now I just tell people I was frozen between 2020 and 2023. Mentally, I still am. So, yeah, maybe the minions didn't work for Hitler, but they definitely give off, "I served something evil, and now I pretend I didn't" energy. Just like me when someone asks if I ever liked Glee. It's just a cartoon. Colorful, weirdly shaped babies having random adventures while their parents do absolutely nothing. But according to one theory, none of the babies in Rugrats are real. They're all dead, or never existed. And everything we saw was in the imagination of Angelica, who, by the way, is a toddler and somehow already needs therapy. Here's how the theory breaks it down. Tommy, he was a stillbirth. That's why his dad is always in the basement inventing toys. He's grieving a child that never made it. Chucky died in a car crash with his mother. Explains why his dad is anxious, overprotective, and looks like he hasn't slept since Reagan left office. Phil and Lil? A miscarriage. The parents didn't know the gender, so Angelica imagined both. And Dill? The only one actually born, which is why he acts differently. He doesn't fit her imaginary world, and why Angelica slowly spirals out of control the moment he shows up. Disturbing? Yes. Borderline criminal? Also, yes. But the theory makes the show feel hauntingly quiet when you rewatch it. Like every adventure is just Angelica trying to escape grief with a talking reptile toy and a suspicious amount of power for someone who can't read. And honestly, it's the saddest take on childhood nostalgia I've ever heard. Because if true, Rugrats isn't about growing up. It's about refusing to let go. Me? I thought I was just watching cartoons at age 7. Turns out I was witnessing a child process loss through imaginary friends and mild property damage, which, to be fair, is still healthier than what I did. memorize Titanic line by line and insist I was emotionally fluent. So yeah, maybe the babies aren't real, but the emotional damage? Oh, very real. On paper, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is the ultimate teenage fantasy. Skip school, steal a Ferrari, hijack a parade, and somehow, miraculously, avoid getting grounded. But some fans say it's all fake, because Ferris, he doesn't exist. He's just a coping mechanism living inside the deeply repressed psyche of Cameron Fry. Yep, this theory says we've all been watching a nervous breakdown in real time, with musical numbers. Let's go through the evidence. Ferris has no real arc, no stakes. He's perfect from start to finish. Cool, invincible, never breaks a sweat. Like if James Bond and a student council president had a baby raised entirely on Pop-Tarts and smugness. Meanwhile, Cameron actually goes through something. He starts out like a Victorian ghost in a bathrobe and ends up kicking a priceless sports car into a forest. That's not comic relief. That's therapy with more property damage. And Sloane, Ferris's girlfriend, she doesn't even seem that into him. She's just there like, cool, I guess I'm dating your imaginary friend now. Also, have you seen how the world reacts to Ferris? The entire city of Chicago collectively decides to cancel their day and worship this one high school kid who, let's be honest, would have definitely vaped in class if this were made today. And let's talk about tone. The whole movie feels like it's being narrated by a guy who's definitely talked to himself in the mirror for too long. You know, like me. Except Ferris gets a parade and I get 3 likes on a YouTube video about banned children's movies and a comment that just says mid. So yeah, Ferris Bueller might not be a real person. He might just be the last happy thought of a teenager who's one bad report card away from a padded room. You probably remember Toy Story 3 for what it is on the surface. A beautiful goodbye. Andy grows up, the toys move on, and everyone watching cries like they just lost a family member. But some viewers notice something else, something that sticks with you for the wrong reasons. What if Toy Story 3 isn't just about moving on? What if it's an allegory for the Holocaust? Now, before you roll your eyes, hear it out. The toys are forcibly removed from their home, thrown in a garbage bag, and sent away in a truck. When they arrive at Sunnyside Daycare, it looks cheerful. Bright walls, friendly staff. But that illusion fades fast. They're imprisoned, segregated, treated like objects, broken, discarded. The ones who question the rules are silenced or punished. Lotso, the smiling dictator, controls everything, even the hope of escape. And then comes that furnace scene, the moment where they all accept their fate. No struggle, no screaming, just holding hands, together, waiting. It's devastating, and eerily familiar. Was that Pixar's intention? Probably not, but the visual language is there, the emotional tone, the collective resignation. Maybe it's just coincidence. Or maybe the writers understood something deeper about loss, about systems that destroy innocence, about memories that are too heavy to carry in words, so we pass them down through plastic toys and animated eyes. And suddenly, So Long Partner doesn't feel like closure anymore. It feels like a eulogy. So, what have we learned? That Kevin McAllister might be Jigsaw, that Sandy might be dead, that the Minions may or may not have a suspicious gap in their resume, and that cartoons are apparently just elaborate warnings from the future. Fan theories, especially the disturbing ones, don't just twist the story, they reshape it. They turn childhood nostalgia into psychological thrillers and musical comedies into existential nightmares. And the wild part? Sometimes they make a little too much sense. But whether these theories are true, false, or born in the dark corners of Reddit at 3 a.m. during a caffeine crash, one thing's for sure. Movies were never just movies. And honestly, neither were we. Thanks for sticking with me through 10 truly unhinged rewrites of pop culture. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to rewatch Shrek and probably discover that Donkey died in the first 5 minutes. Catch you next time, unless I was never real to begin with.